This episode of Cell and Gene the podcast is brought to you in partnership with Thermo Fisher Scientific. Thermo Fisher's cell therapy processing instruments are designed to help customers transition from process development to commercial manufacturing, utilized as standalone devices or integrated as part of a closed modular process. Thermo Fisher Scientific recommends Gibco CTS DynaSelect Magnetic Separation System, which is a next-gen cell isolation and activation instrument. Gibco CTS Xenon Electroporation System allows customers full control to optimize for a variety of cell types and payloads. And Gibco CTS Rotea Counterflow Centrifugation System is a closed cell processing system supporting a broad range of protocols for cell separation, washing, and concentration. Customers can rely on and streamline their drug development process with Applied Biosystems QualTrack qPCR and dPCR quality control tools for robust and reliable genetic analysis across various phases of drug development, supported by relevant, compliant documentation. Hello, listeners, and welcome to this episode of Cell and Gene the podcast. I'm your host, Erin Harris, and my guest for this episode is Paolo Siciliano, Associate Partner at PA Consulting, an innovation and transformation consultancy based in London. Paolo, thank you for being my guest today. I'm so glad you're here to talk to us.
Thanks to you, Erin. Really pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about PA Consulting first. So, PA Consulting has offices all over the globe, including the UK. Like we said, you're headquartered in London, and you also have offices in the United States. So talk to us briefly about PA Consulting, as well as your own areas of focus as associate partner as it applies to cell and gene therapy.
Perfect. Yeah, for sure. So let me start about what I do. So as you mentioned, I'm an associate partner at PA Consulting, which means I'm responsible for everything that PA does in the cell and gene therapy space, which includes everything from the support that we provide to clients across the entire value chain or vein-to-vein chain, but also I'm responsible for growing the capabilities and our offering internally in PA. Let me tell you a bit about PA Consulting. So PA Consulting is a global management consulting firm. We've been around since the 1940s, and we, as you said, we have offices across the world. We focus mainly on three geographies, these being the US, the UK, and the Nordics here in Europe. We have about 4,000, just over 4,000 employees at the moment, and we focus on a number of different sectors. So healthcare and life sciences being one of them, but we also work in the consumer space, defense and security, transport and consumer products, and many more. When it comes to how PA is different from other organizations I would say PA is quite unique. Of course, we provide a number of management consulting services that you would expect from classic management consulting, from strategy, operation improvement, change management, and so on. What makes PA very unique is the fact that we really focus on technology and innovation. PA has about 5 technology centers today, where we have electronic engineers, mechanical engineers, scientists, molecular biologists like myself, where we actually develop technologies for our clients. What we mean is we do product development for them and with them, and we bring new products to market from a hardware and software perspective. When it comes to, I would say, the different sectors, healthcare and life sciences is the main area of focus for PA. We have roughly 800 people working in this space. And when it comes to cell and gene, that is the reason why you and I are having a conversation today, of course. This, I would say, is relatively a new area for PA. We're a new player in this space. We've been actively working in cell and gene for, let's say, the last 4.5, 5 years. And what we do today in this space, we work across the value chain, right? So we work with technology developers, we work with therapy developers, we work with hospitals and suppliers of different solutions to all the above. What we do is we provide a number of services that span from technology development, as I was mentioning. So we develop new bioreactors, consumables, sensors, bespoke devices that can be used by technology manufacturers and therapy manufacturers in the manufacturing of cell and gene. We focus quite a lot on technology strategy. So we use our technical experts in cell and gene that have been in the space for decades, and we support clients across the ecosystem to understand how the market is moving from a technology perspective, how they can access and leverage new technologies, and how they can grow in this space. On top of that, one other area that is key for PA in this space is we help clients understanding the value, business case, pricing strategies around new technologies. For technologies and products that might be 5, 6, 7, 8 years out in the not in the market. This is particularly because we know how to develop technologies. We're expert in innovation, so we can, I would say, more than predict, we can extrapolate what the value for the different stakeholders could be for a new technology. And we also provide some advice in the manufacturing process. So we work with therapy developers. We look at how they manufacture the therapies, and we can provide unbiased advice on how and what best technologies to bring into the manufacturing lines. And last but not least, one thing I also wanted to mention is PA is now part of Jacobs Engineering, which you might be aware or not, is one of the major construction engineering company in the world, and one of the major developer of cell and gene therapy facilities in the world. So at the moment, we can provide a large number of services in this space. And as I said, we're quite unique in how we provide these services.
Excellent. Well, and I'm very glad for the breakdown of exactly what PA Consulting does, and especially you and your role, because you are the first person from a consultancy that I've had on the podcast. So this is really exciting for me, and I think we deliver a lot of really good information. So this is great. You did mention manufacturing, which I want to get into a little bit. On Cell and Gene, we cover manufacturing heavily and soup to nuts. And so I wanted to get your take on a few things. All right. So when it comes to manufacturing, I want to talk a little bit about automating the diverse processes across cell and gene therapy to scale it, right? So a lot of our readers and our listeners are small biotechs. How can these companies scale manufacturing with limited resources, limited funds? What would your best advice be to that specific type of company?
That's a great question. And so let me unpack this a little, because obviously you mentioned manufacturing. And so if we think about the cell and gene therapy space at the moment, so despite all the advancements that we're seeing in manufacturing technologies, manufacturing processes, our understanding of the biological sciences behind cells and DNA and all that, we know that manufacturing is still the main challenge that we have in the cell and gene therapy industry, right? At the moment, processes are not streamlined, are not efficient in a number of ways. And it's something that you potentially would expect from a new industry, right? We're still a young industry with this regard. The challenges that we have in manufacturing today are a major contributor to the second major challenge that is usually the elephant in the room when you talk about CGT, that is the cost, right, of these therapies, which at the moment is jaw-dropping. So if we look at the manufacturing today, right, we have efficiencies related to the fact that it's pretty manual in a number of, obviously it's we're kind of putting manufacturing under one single umbrella. We know it's very diverse depending on the modality, but in general, we have a manual process, highly trained personnel that is required for manufacturing these therapies, expensive facilities. And at the moment, there's a lack of automation that we're seeing some, but still not widespread. And one thing that also came out from one of the workshops that we run at Facilitate a couple of weeks ago is the lack in adoption of digital solutions at the moment in manufacturing. So if you put all these things together, then you get to inefficiencies from a reproducibility, quality, you get delays, inability to meet demand. So just to bring it all up to one level, manufacturing at the moment, all the challenges that we have in manufacturing in cell and gene, what is causing is less therapy on the market for patients and more expensive therapies, right? If we look at the reasons of why this is happening at the moment, so as we mentioned earlier, first of all, we are a new industry, right? Yes, research has been going on for probably 2-3 decades now. If we look at Kymriah, the first therapy in the market was 5 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. So we're still a very new market. The processes are not standardized. We have different modalities from cell to gene therapy, in vivo and ex vivo, with different cell types, with different recipes that you use to produce your therapy. So all these make it quite complex to standardize the manufacturing process. And the other challenge, that again, something that we mentioned quite heavily in a facilitator a few weeks ago, is if you think about this industry was born from scientists coming from a medical/biological background, right? Which historically are not trained for being expert in automation, digital technology, scaling up manufacturing and all this, right? And what we're going through is a transition where we're basically merging together different experience in the industry. So if we think about how do we fix this, right, at the moment from a manufacturing perspective, so how do we enable scale up? So when we look at what's happening in the manufacturing technology space at the moment, we're seeing there's a large number of organizations that are trying one way or another to bring automation and bring different solutions to the market. From new bioreactors, new cell processing machines, fill and finish, introduction of new digital platforms and all that. And so at the moment, there's quite a variety of solutions out there in the market, right? One very interesting thing that we're seeing is this eternal battle between the one machine approach, the fully automated, and the modular approach, right? Because this, I think, is key for early biotechs that are getting into the scaling up the manufacturing. So if we look at the market at the moment, you have companies that are providing technologies that, to oversimplify it, put ingredients in, everything happens in one box, you have the therapy on the other side, right? Almost fully automated, minimal manual interventions, and most of the steps happening in one machine, right? Some examples, you have the Miltenyi Biotech, you will have the Cocoon from Lonza, the Adva Bio and the Ori Biotech as new entrants in this market. So this one machine approach provides a number of advantages, right? As you reduce risk, reduce contamination and all that. Obviously, you have some drawbacks as well when it comes to flexibility and scale up versus scale out and all that. If you look on the other side of the spectrum, you have the modular approaches, right? The one that are pushed by companies like the big players in the space, Thermo Fisher, Cytiva, the Fresenius, the Terumo. By the way, I'm not publicizing one or the other. I'm just listing some examples here. So what we're seeing at the moment is almost like the debate about autologous versus allogeneic, right? You had people going on one side or the other, and now the industry is realizing that we will have both, right? And we can probably agree that most of the industry now is going towards that direction, that both therapy lines will coexist. And also from a technology perspective, we will have an environment where you will have a combination of these one machine approach, modular approaches, and somewhere in the middle. So one thing that I think is also important to mention is the fact that on one side, you have the technology developers, you have the digital layer, right? So the providers of digital solutions from a lab perspective, from a facility perspective, on how you connect with logistics and how you connect with hospitals. On top of that, you also have association and organizations that are actually working with the wider industry, trying to bring automation and bring new practices in. Look at, for example, the cell and gene therapy catapult and what they're doing here in the UK, working across the industry trying to bring innovation automation. I think the interesting thing is there are solutions out there, and importantly, there's support out there. Because there would be, sorry for this long-winded introduction to say what's my advice to and small biotech at the moment with limited resources is look for support. At the moment, if I think about a small biotech, and I'm generalizing a little here, but your main asset is your therapy or your platform, whatever you're developing, and the experience of the people that develop that. Realistically, you don't have the in-house expertise to understand what are the best practices, what are the best technologies from a manufacturing standpoint, scale up, facility development, digital, and so on, which is fine, not having those in-house. I think at the moment out there are a number of organizations that are able to support, to identify what are the best approaches and the best solution. There's not a one-size-fits-all at the moment, meaning if one solution works for a specific company, it doesn't necessarily mean that it will work for another one. But as we mentioned, different modalities, different therapies, different volumes and demands and all that. So it's really trying to understand where you're sitting there and finding the right support. One other thing that I would strongly recommend is to look at both the need of the now, but also your mid and long-term objectives. Because when you select not only the technology, but how you set up your facility for scaling up, is really think about, yes, you have your milestones that are really close in time, but don't lock yourself into something that then needs to be completely changed when you need to move to the next step. And another option, of course, is to, there's a lot of debate now on who is going to manufacture these therapies in the future, right? If it's the big pharma, if it's the biotech, or if it's CDMOs, right? We're seeing more and more CDMOs at the moment appearing in the market. We obviously have the large established one, but we have a lot of small ones specialized in specific cell types in specific areas. So the support is out there. The investment from a time and cash perspective in getting some advice is not that impossible to achieve. And one other thing I wanted to mention on this is the level of collaboration we're seeing in this industry at the moment is unseen, meaning you can get a lot of advice almost for free out there, because we live this as an industry at the moment where we are trying to support each other, so that there's a lot of support when needed.
I couldn't agree more with especially what you just said about there's a real drive toward a community. It's a community effort to, there are no, I shouldn't say no, but there isn't this level of trade secret type of information. People really are trying to share versus, hold everything to themselves. And that's a really good place to be, especially now. I wanted to maybe drill down a little bit more from a business perspective when it comes to, when a company is able to scale, what is the long-term impact on the business? What does that actually look like? And that could be small biotech. Obviously, it looks different for, a much larger company, but, when a company is able to scale, what does that look like on the back end? What long-term impact does that have?
So that's an interesting question. So I think when a company is able to understand the kind of technologies that need to bring in, type of facilities, and I think the impact that they have is, so you have the direct impact on the therapy that you're developing now, right? So that, first of all, enables you to hopefully meet your milestone in, let's assume that you reach that during your phase 2 clinical trial, right? So first of all, you manage to meet demand to run your trials efficiently, which is, again, one key area where, the investment expenditure can be very high. But then obviously also provides you with the reassurance that then when you really need to scale up and meet demand in the market, which we know is still one of the major challenges, even for big pharma, right? It's actually providing your investors with the reassurance that this has been thought through. On the other side, I think it also enables organization, and again, it really depends on what's in your pipeline, but it also enables you to start making projections on how you can start introducing new assets, right, in your portfolio. Because when you start locking down certain processes and certain facilities, then it makes it easier to bring in new assets and learn from that. So overall, I think it helps on the specific therapy, but the overall portfolio as well.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. What, maybe drill down even a little bit more on talking to the biotech about, how to address tomorrow's scalability challenges. What are some of the best practices that companies can be doing now to get ahead of it?
Okay, so when we look at these, I think for me, as I was mentioning earlier, I think to address some of the scalability challenges, first of all, is make sure that you identified what are the right technologies that you need to bring in, right? So try to understand which type of equipment you need, which type of digital technologies you're going to implement, which type of facility you will need. The second is identify who are the right partners that will help you bring this to life, right? Are you doing everything in-house? Are you working in collaboration with the CDMOs? And if you're working with external parties, which are the relevant ones and the best ones for you? The third point for me would also start early working with regulators on one side to understand where you will be able to change and modify your process in a way that can enable you to meet your the demands in a way that you don't have to run bridging studies if you're bringing in changes in your manufacturing process early on. So at the moment, I think, again, going back to the technology, for me, the important thing to think about is really focus on what is the best that works for you. Because I know that we're trying to talk about best practices, but at the moment, it's hard to identify which ones these would be, because we're seeing completely different approaches from and successful approaches, both from pharma and biotech, some going down the one machine approach and some going down a modular.
Okay, good. Thank you. I want to talk just for a brief minute about the state of investment in cell and gene therapy broadly, and just kind of your personal take on it. We know 2020, 2021 was very successful. 2022 in cell and gene therapy, the investment was down. I think it's like 85% down for the rest of the world in terms of the number of deals being made. With that bigger slowdown, what do you think we can expect in 2023 and even in the short term, a few years beyond now?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. So first of all, I'm more than happy to give you my view on these. Just want to mention that my personal focus is not really investment, but MPA. Obviously, we monitor these quite closely. So as you mentioned, 2022 has been a big shift compared to the last 2 years, right? And the reduction has been quite dramatic, I would say. So if we look at the reasons for this, right, at the moment there are a number of reasons that we can into that. So of course we have the macroeconomic and political challenges that we're going through that we're all familiar with, which obviously had an impact on a number of markets, not only on cell and gene. The overall biotech industry, right, shrunk in 22, and so a reduction in investment and deals. And on the other side, we're also seeing some of the investment in the cell and gene therapy space didn't really deliver the return that we're expecting, right? Or the results that they were expecting. And these was both on the therapeutic side, but also on the technology side, right? Because we have a lot of investment in that area too. And I mean, the one other input is that if you think about what happened in 2020 and 2021, we can't forget about the impact that COVID vaccine had on the cell and gene therapy industry, right? Because obviously the success of the mRNA vaccine for COVID obviously provided a lot of publicity and confidence in the market that the overall ATMP, not just cell and gene, but the overall ATMP umbrella is here, it's now, it works. So we're probably towards the end of the tail of that. So there's also a bit of that, and some investors are probably less excited now. But if we flip it around, and if you look at the market today, right? So in 22, we still had 10 approvals, right, for therapies, both in cell and gene, both for oncology and non-oncology applications, right? We have about 18 other therapies close to get some sort of regulatory decision. We have something like 3,000 different therapies at different stages of development, lots still in preclinical and early clinical, but there's about 100 in phase 3 and pre-commercial. And there's over 1,000 trials, depending on which source you use for these numbers. But realistically, these are the numbers. And if you look at that, that looks like a solid, healthy industry at the moment. So we've seen innovation, we've seen a lot of energy and optimism. So it's this level of uncertainty, right, that we're seeing at the moment, which is hard to get your head around. I think what we will see in 23 and beyond. So one thing that we are definitely expecting is some consolidation. This will definitely happen over the next few years in different areas. On one side, from a therapeutic perspective, at the moment, if you look at certain indications, there are a large number of different ways on how we can tackle a specific disease or condition. And as a market dynamic, there will be some selection there. So there will be some consolidation around the therapy area, because of course there's a limited number of patients that can receive these therapies. And from a technology perspective, I think what we will start seeing now is larger technology developers actually acquiring IP and technologies from smaller players. Obviously, now some of the smaller players that worked really hard to bring new technology innovation to the market are getting closer to market and launch. So what we will probably see is some of the larger ones trying to get access to some of that IP and those technologies. I think on the other side, we will also still see some fragmentation, because obviously the market is still quite fragmented at the moment, especially when it comes to different modalities. In the cell therapy space, we still see the race of which cell type is better for X, Y, and Z is still very open at the moment. So I think there will still be some fragmentation in that space, and from a platform perspective, right, on which transformation technologies and all that. From an investment perspective, and again, raise my hands not as an expert here, but what we're probably going to say is, yes, there's potentially less capital available. I think investors are a bit more cautious at the moment in where they put their money. I think that for those organizations that will still have solid science behind in a strong board with the network and with a proper vision and plan, some intellectual property and a decent platform, I think they will still manage to raise the money needed. I think if there's true science and something real behind that, you will still be able to get the investment. And we're seeing the first signs of that. So overall, I would say optimistic. 2022 has been a bit of a slowdown, but hopefully they will pick up this year.
Good. Yeah. And thank you for that. That's all really valuable information. And I know you're not deeming yourself an expert, but it is very expert-like information. So thank you. I appreciate that. On the investment side, we've reached the formal end of our episode. And so at the end of every episode, I like to talk to my guests about what they do when they are in the office or the lab. And so here's yours. You're based in London. And what does a typical weekend in London look like for you?
or typical weekend in London. So I'll turn it around as a question to you. I'm a management consultant with a 2-year-old toddler at home. What do you think a weekend would look like? I would love to say parachuting and bungee jumping, but realistically, I think it's no, jokes apart. I've always been into sport and travel. Those are the two things that me and my wife have always been a thing. So now with the toddler, of course, he takes priority in our life. And but yeah, when we can, we still travel. And we try to get as much sport as we can over the weekend. Obviously, the weather in London doesn't help, but yeah.
I understand. I'm in the northeast of the United States, and so I understand that weather is, you're always at the mercy of it. At one point, I did have a 2-year-old toddler, so I understand. Hopefully, you're at a lot of playgrounds and, getting fresh air and getting the wiggles out. So that, did you say you have a son?
Yes.
Yes.
A little boy.
He is ready for nap time and hits that nap window, and so
yes.
The sleep schedule timing is of great importance. So, expel some energy, have some fun, get a nap in so that bedtime's on time. I completely understand it. But then you and your wife can enjoy some sporting events as well too. That's great. Well, this was wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Paolo. This was a lot of fun. And that brings us to the end of our episode. I want to formally thank you, Paolo Siciliano from PA Consulting, for your time. This was great. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Erin. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Listeners, please be sure to visit cellandgene.com, subscribe to this podcast, and follow us on social media. And we will talk to you soon.